Ready, steady, go. Here we are. Hello.
We are live. Back in the room.
Live. We're back in the room. And we weren't here last week, were we? Terribly remiss, but we're back now. We've had a bit of a reset, haven't we?
Yes.
It was necessary. It was necessary. But to make up for it, we've been banging on things, haven't we?
Well, drumming, yes. Speak for yourself, Mrs.
That's what I was referring to. Drumming. So no, we've had lots and lots of drumming, which of course is a very magical thing in its own right, isn't it? And we've got more drumming to come on Saturday, have we not?
Indeed, we are performing once again.
Indeed,
yes.
Yeah.
It was lovely,
good, isn't it? It is. It's brilliant, and it's
so good for the soul. It's other people enjoy it so much.
Yeah,
it's fun and loud and just. And I just still can't believe that I remembered any of it. It's like there's something going on there because I've done so little of it over this. But it kind of gets into you. I think you get muscle memory and intuition has. Thank God for intuition. That's all I can say.
Yeah,
goddess, perhaps.
Yes, it does work. The drumming goddess. Yes. Is there a drumming goddess? I don't know.
There should be.
Is there a drumming goddess? That's a good question, is it?
There'll be some aspect of the goddess that will encompass making music and making noise.
Yeah, indeed. Peeps out there, drumming goddess, please. So we've got some people in. So we've got a big hello to Redwing. Hello. And big hello to Hannah. Hello, Hans. Hope you're well today. And everybody else that's watching and everybody that's listening back later on. Hello.
You're welcome.
So, yes, drumming. I always think it's a brilliant thing. And it doesn't matter what type of drumming it is. It's just such a basal thing, don't you think?
Oh gosh, yes. It's
really primitive, isn't it?
It's just a rhythmic thing. It's part of who we are. It's like a heartbeat. It
is.
And you cannot be thinking of something else while you're doing it. In fact, thinking at all for me personally gets right in the way. The minute I try and think about what I'm doing, and this was proven at some of the practice.
Yeah.
And to try and analyze it, it's a fail. You end up falling over yourself. Whereas you learned a new tune, which I can't remember for the life of me now, but I know when we get back together, it will come back to me. So I just trust that process and don't worry too much.
Yeah, exactly. But I do. I think it's a brilliant thing. And it's just, for me as well, it doesn't matter what type of drumming it is, whether it's my vibe drum or whether it's my thrash drum or whether it's, shamanic type drum. It doesn't matter. It's that whole, I don't know, you can really connect with it and it's the sound and you can feel the vibrations really deep inside, can't you? And I love that. That's brilliant. So, good for the soul. So, yes. Anyway, so we've been doing loads of that.
Has answered the question about the goddess. I think that's predictive text playing with you there. I think that's Iana.
Iana. It's the creator of the frame drum, along with other musical instruments. Thanks, Hans. Iana. Absolutely, yes. Thank you very much.
Fountain of all knowledge. You really must have them on again for chat and information because you get far more sense out of them than me. Just saying.
I don't know. Yes, but definitely. Yes, that would be nice. So one of the things that I thought we could talk about today, amongst drumming and other bits and pieces that we've been up to, is binding, not magic, and poppets. And the reason for that is that I've been doing a selection of the above. I've had some legal stuff that needed to be chivied up, shall we say? Sort of legal and personal stuff, and it just needed to be settled, really. And so part of the spell I did actually last year, and so what I was doing was the second part, and it's good to point out to some people that might sort of think, spells are 5-minute wonders, or maybe over the course of 2 days, 3 days, a week, or whatever. That there are some spells that literally take a year or two to perform, don't they? And you have to have like breaks in the middle and so on, and then finish it off. And that's where I've been at this week, actually finishing off something that was started probably about 18 months ago, actually. And that's quite a good feeling. It's quite a feeling of relief that it's all finished and cleared, and I've got a bit of more space in my little tiny house, so which is quite nice. only a stick's worth, mind you, but it's still a bit more space. So yeah, and I thought it might be quite nice to have a discussion about those things actually, because they're good. They're good broad topics as much as anything. Plus, I've been twiddling about with them myself. So yeah.
Well, exactly. You've obviously been using them for specific purposes, and they all have. It's like anything. It's in your sort of toolbox of things you might use. You might not use one for ever such a long time, and then all of a sudden, it's like, right, I need that.
Exactly. Yeah. So should we start off talking about poppets first of all? Now, poppets aren't something that I dealt with this week. It was a different type of magic, but it kind of comes into its own really in this particular setting, I think. And first book that I want to recommend is, of course, Lucia's book. Good old Lucia. Hi, Lucia. I know you'll be watching it a bit later on. So this is Lucia's book on poppets. I don't know if you can see that. Poppets and magical dolls.
That is such a great, well-explained, clear, practical thing.
It really is. I like practical books. I like books on everything really, but I like the really sort of practical stuff that really covers what you need to cover, gives you reasons as to all the whys and wherefores. And it's it does what it says on the tin basically. Highly recommend this. And in fact, I was really, really lucky to be part of her kind of research things with doing it as well. So there's a couple of things in here that I've made. Actually, there's 3 things in here that I've made. Several actually, but I've got 3 to show you. And the first one is this little chap. So this is me. I'm all orange. Look,
like a gingerbread man.
I am. Yeah, look, that's me. So that is me. So I've got a little key on here. That's Hecate's key, and I've got a little pentagram on my heart because witchcraft is very dear to me. So that's me, and it's a kind of it's my own personal little support bubble, if you like. And I've got hair in here and some herbs. And she lives in my kitchen because I've got an orange theme going on in the kitchen. So she lives in the kitchen, and I like to do a lot of my magic in the kitchen too. So that's where she lives. She looks a bit glum. Look.
Well, serious, focused.
Definitely glum. Oh, I'm very, very glum. Actually, I'm not glum. I'm quite chirpy today, but there you go.
You are. But you're right about your magic is very much, I mean, the kitchen witch magic, couldn't be truer really for you.
Yeah. But even other magic that's not kitchen magic tends to get done in the kitchen too. Not always, but very often. So that's her. Actually, there's a very similar one on the cover. Look. No. See?
There she is. Laying down in the middle there. There she is.
I think the one in the picture looked a bit less glum than me. Look at that face.
She is having a moment, isn't she?
Anyway, so that's that one. So how to make her is in there. And then if you like knitting or crochet, this was something else that Lucia asked me to help out with. That's another little one. Yeah. Bit more my colours, that one, isn't it?
It's of a darker hue. Yes. It's lovely, but I can't knit or crochet. I'm all right with sewing, so mine are generally sewn.
Yeah.
But sometimes felty material, and sometimes just any fabric that I can find.
Yeah, that one's felt. I don't usually use felt. We did simply because I was helping Lucia with this particular book. But you can use anything, and if it's for you, personally, I think the best fabric that you can use comes from either your knickers, your socks, or your bra, or your pants if you're a fella, because you don't get much more up close and personal than that.
Indeed.
And if it's to represent
contact with the skin,
I mean, give them a rinse first. Just saying.
Nobody wants a stinky puppet.
Well, I don't know. They'd probably go for a fortune on eBay, aren't they?
Oh, don't. Well used. Oh. People do make. Well, people do. They do.
Don't even go there.
It's not happening. La, not listening.
Nothing to hear. Oh dear. Yes. Well, you came in at the right time, Chris, didn't you? Hi, Chris. Hope you're well. And hi to Jerry Paul as well.
Morning.
Oh dear. Yes. Anyway, if you want something that's personal for you, use personal items of your own. Underwear, yes, absolutely. It does what it says on the tin, because if it's to represent you, especially if you're not going to be, flaunting it around in the middle of Tesco's, then why not? trying to make sense. So yeah, and then the last one that I've got, then again, this is in Lucia's book, is this one, which is a bit fluffy actually. But this one is oh god, Serviette. If you can see her. So, you know, there's lots of different types of ones that you can make, and it depends on what you want them for. So if you want something that's a bit more permanent, you know, make something that maybe you want to sew. Obviously, you can make them out of clay and all sorts of things, and wax, and, you know, that kind of stuff.
I've done wax. I have used wax myself.
What's nice about that, for me, I think they're really good if they're for somebody else because they're pliable.
Well, exactly. And I mean, I made one for myself many, many years ago when I was wishing to have an Alex, wishing to get pregnant. It's part of the magic we did was we did knot magic and we did all sorts, but certainly working with wax and poppets. Oh yeah. And I've still got it now. I still have it. Obviously it's not for a purpose, but it's it reminds me of just how much he was wanted.
Yeah.
And still is, obviously.
Lovely. Oh, it's lovely. But it's nice because it's malleable, isn't it? If it's, you know, if it's warm, it's soft, and then you can, you know, sort of get it to move, and you can get it to do what you want it to do. So, you know, in those sort of circumstances, when you want something to be movable, then actually that's quite useful. So yeah, this sort of thing, actually, I usually have her sitting on my light bulb in my, which is a eco bulb which doesn't get hot, but I have her sitting on my bulb in my bedroom, on my bedside light actually, and she just sort of like takes some of the, you know, the glare off the light. But that's quite nice. So it's just a bit of string and paper, but again, they're really quite good if you want something that's quick, or you need something that's quick, or if you want something that's going to burn fairly efficiently. Again, you know, it's quite a good thing to do that.
Yeah, so, that's a very good one.
Yeah. I think one of the most successful poppets that I had, that I got somebody else to make actually, was they asked me to do some magic for them. This was probably, I don't know, 8 years ago, 7 years ago, quite a while ago anyway. And a friend of mine, she was bigger than she wanted to be, and she'd had gastric band surgery, which had been temporarily successful. It was beginning to fail, basically, because as with anything, if you push the boundaries, things will start going wrong. And she was aware that, you know, she was falling back into her old ways and stuff like that. And it was amazing actually, because what we did is I got her, and she wasn't a sewer, so it took a long time and a lot of effort for her to put this thing together. But I got her to sew a poppet, and inside what we did, apart from putting like personal effects of hers, like hair and nails and all that kind of stuff, because it was representing her, not for anybody else, you know, nothing dark and dismal in there, just purely for her. But I wanted to know what smelt the worst to her. A food item. Yeah, a food item. Yeah, a food item that she absolutely hated. And in fact, what she hated, weirdly, was cinnamon. Now, I think cinnamon's a wonderful smell. I love that.
Everybody likes it.
Yeah, but not everyone does. And she hated it with a passion. And so we filled it up. She was practically gagging while we were doing it, to be honest. She really, really hated it. So we did that, and then we had a little thing. We put some honey in there to make it, and some sugar. And the idea was, and we sort of got, you know, sort of various other things within the spell. Everything would taste. She had a very sweet tooth, but basically by adding lots and lots and lots of this stuff to the spell, the idea was that everything would taste just too sweet. That was the idea. And if something's too sweet, you can't eat much of it.
No,
that was the idea. So we did that, and then about a fortnight later, 10 days later, or a fortnight later, we went out for Sunday lunch, actually, at the golf club, if you do. No golf club, or not mine. And so we went off up to the golf club, and she'd had a child's portion of roast dinner, which was quite a normal thing for her to have. Because obviously she'd had the gastric band surgery and so on and so forth. So she had a child's portion for Sunday dinner. And then she wanted and she didn't eat it all. And then she wanted a dessert. And it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. She literally took one mouthful, made a face, and then she took another mouthful and she went, "Oh, I can't eat that. It's too sweet." And she didn't know what I'd been doing, the other stuff. We'd done the poppet, but she didn't know the other stuff. And yeah, she's still a large lady. She's the sort of lady that enjoys being, you know, a bigger size. And good for her. You know, she embraces it, but she was unhealthily large. And she's managed to maintain the weight that she's happy with, which is brilliant. And so that was 7 years ago. So
That's
yeah,
lovely.
that was really good. And the idea, of course, with the poppet was that it represented her, and every time she was thinking about something, as you say, aversion therapy, just smell it and so on. It was like, oh, no, perhaps not. But again, it's that auto suggestion. It's like, don't want that. That's just ugh.
But that's exactly it. You're trying to plant ideas quite deep into the mind so that they'll be there when you're in a certain situation. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Brilliant.
But it was brilliant. I sort of clapped my hands together in glee. It was so funny. She's like, "What?" I was like, "Never mind."
So, yeah, because you don't really want to explain once you ruin the magic. If you start explaining to people, it really weakens it, doesn't it?
It does. It dissipates it. Yeah. But it was just so funny. And as I say, I quote, her words were, "Oh, I can't eat that. It's too sweet." So it's like
triumph.
Yes. Happy clap. So yeah, so that was really good, and it's amazing. You can use them for so many things, can't you? Whether it's you know, sort of confidence because you're going on a job interview, or performing, or you know, like we were last week, or you know, just sort of generally perk you up if you're feeling down. All sorts of reasons. You know, it's a really good go-to thing, and of course, if you want something specifically, like you said with Alex. So yeah, I think they're rather useful. What's Dawn saying there?
It's quite funny.
May need to be more careful when I call my wee darlings poppet. Do you know I always call my kids poppet?
Yeah, I tend to use it as well.
Yeah. I call my grandchildren poppet rather than unless my kids aren't feeling very well, in which case a motherly poppet never goes amiss, does it?
Well, there is that.
Big as they might be, yes. So yeah, but I know what you mean, Dawn. Yeah, easy does it.
Be careful how you use it.
Okay. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about is pop poppets away, shall we? Let's pop them away. The other thing as well is that I make marinitsa every spring. So they go out on the 31st of March. That's Bulgarian tradition for the fruit trees. And usually made from wool, not exclusively, but usually made from wool. And you do the red one and the white one, you put them together and then you hang them in the tree and then you get a nice fruitful tree. So yes.
Yeah, there's lots of different traditions that are around fertility of fruit trees and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, from wassailing your apples.
Yes, we'll be doing some of that in is it January or February we're doing that?
There seems to be some debate about the date, but I think it's probably February, because that seems to be a better time.
Yeah, there's some people that actually do wassailing before Yule, and I find that really odd.
That is really weird, because the idea is meant to be to kind of sort of wake the tree up. In other words, you know, the sap needs to start rising. But that's not really going to happen until at least February in my book.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean maybe January, depending on where you are.
But you don't want to peak too early, do you?
No, exactly. No, definitely not. But yeah, I do, and I know that it's, you know, it's not just one or two people that choose to do it. I know there's quite a contingency of people that do it before you, and I find that really odd. Really odd.
Yeah, maybe it's the need to be celebrating or feeling like you're doing something, but I kind of think there's enough that goes on before you, whereas there is that real quiet area,
Yes,
it's like dead space after you.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, waking them up with a drum doesn't hurt, does it?
Well, no, it can only be a good thing. Noisy.
Oi! And if there's going to be, you know, certain amounts of cider and things like that on the menu, well, I mean, what's not to like, really?
Well, exactly. I mean, one of the
That's one
loveliest things
side.
actually about the drumming side of things is the fact that it's such small children are so drawn to it. They absolutely, it's like a magnet, isn't it? I mean, adults as well, but they tend to have a bit more reservedness and a bit more like, oh well, you know, let the kids come flying up to you, desperate to have a go.
Yeah, exactly. Mind you, there's almost always mum or dad in the background also desperately trying to have a go.
Itching.
Come on, dad, pick up the stick. You know you want to.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also what I quite like is, you know, with the drumming, so the sort of drumming that we do, it does follow the pagan year actually quite well, doesn't it? And it's you know, it's sort of useful for you know, sort of pulling it out as and when you've got various Sabbats and other more traditional celebrations as well. It's all good. So yeah, all good stuff. All good stuff. So then I thought we'd talk about not magic then. Okay. Book recommendation. Here it comes. Ready? Right. If you've got this book, think yourself lucky. It's a corker.
To learn Penry.
Yeah, to learn Penry. She's brilliant. So this lady is a very, very well established Welsh witch. And actually she has her own YouTube channel and she does a lot of how-to videos. She does lots of talky stuff too, but she does a lot of how-to videos and stuff. So if you haven't already checked her out, do. I'll put a reminder of her name because it's an unusual name. I'll put a reminder of her name on the blurb afterwards. But this book is excellent and it's got a history of it as well. I always like a bit of history as well as
I've read that one.
You're not?
No, I don't think I have. I'm sure I've heard of her. You may have mentioned. Well, you know, there's always a book to be read.
Yeah, no, she's a lovely, lovely lady. I'm very, very fond of her and she's great. And she's written lots of books and she has an independent publishers, which is Wolf and Howl Press. And yeah, she's very knowledgeable and very interesting and very, very nice, actually. And she lives in a little Welsh cottage, a little Welsh town with a couple of basset hounds, you know, those with the floppy ears and the droopy eyes. And
yes.
They're really rather naughty. So yeah, so you have quite, you know, sort of all that side of things as well, and so on, and all the, you know, the country life comes into it. It's lovely actually. You know, and there's always something for her to be talking about. But this book is excellent. So yeah, Not Magic by Tulla and Penry. It's an excellent book, and it's, you know, it's got a history of different stuff in here as well as how to do different things. And it's great, you know, it's not just a question of, you know, by knot of one my spell's begun. It's not just about that. There's all different sorts, and you've got different types of knots too. So if you're you know, sort of a reminiscing scout or a wannabe fisherman, either or, it's a book for you.
Well, it does sound interesting because, as you say, everyone's sort of heard of, you know, like you say, the 9-knot thing, and I guess that's become sort of heard about more publicly. But if there are many other forms,
yeah, definitely.
I didn't study a great deal about not magic, not in my training either. It just wasn't something that we had a lot of time for, because we're doing other things. But I know there's a whole raft of information that's got to be good.
Yeah. I find it a really interesting thing, and because I've got really long hair, well, you've seen me do it, sometimes there'll be something I have to do now, and not magical.
Yeah, you'll take some hair
and you'll see, I'll pull some of my hair out and I'll use that. Not so great if you've got a number 2, but a bit tricky.
For a minute there, no.
No.
Sorry, mind went to strange places. Longer hair is obviously more useful, and given the way we shed,
it's definitely more useful than that.
But you know, we're always shedding hair, but you know, I suppose other people don't necessarily.
I need to compose myself now.
Deep breath.
By the time I'm not in one.
And Hannah's given us a lovely list of knots.
Oh God, right, okay.
Tons of knots.
I need to
I didn't know
control
there were that
myself.
many. Sorry, Hans. Yeah.
Oh my God. Here we go. Right. Now I need to just backtrack a little bit and try and be a bit more sensible. I'm very good with that.
Oh, sorry. This happens.
Trust you. Oh
Yep.
God. Oh dear, oh dear. What kind of knots? Please, overhand, figure 8, granny knot, square knot, common whipping, fisherman's, cow hitch, clove hitch, heaving line, sheep bend, double sheep, sheep shank, etc.
Etc.
Yes, etc., etc., etc. Red Wing, yes, I've watched her channel. Yeah, it's really good, isn't it, Red Wing? Really good.
I'm going to seek her out.
Yeah. Okay. This is an interesting point Hans has raised. So if you're doing on thing with poppets, it's best that underwear should be used, and best if possible with menstrual blood and or other fluids for protection, and sometimes it's needed for the magic. Yeah, very true. Depends on the magic, of course, depends on exactly what it is that you're doing. But yeah, exactly. It does depend, of course, exactly on what you're doing, and if you're going to be giving it to somebody, probably not. But yeah, it depends entirely on what it is that you're planning on doing with your particular poppet and what you want it for too. Because there'd be occasions that sort of bodily fluids would be totally inappropriate because you want something else. So yeah, exactly. But yeah, great for personalizing it and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, definitely.
There are more knots, Hans,
yeah.
yes. There are many
Sorry?
more knots. You can list them all, but you'd be here all night.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, but with this, it's not just about tying different knots. It's about how to use it, and of course, I mean that for me, knot magic also incorporates crochet and knitting, and of course, knitting. Well, both of them, they're big things that I do a lot. And it's interesting actually. There's a lot of knitting magic that's out there. And as you know, I've got a thing about yarn and all that kind of stuff. And knitting magic as well as knot magic. There's a certain, I'm going to use the phrase intertwined, pardon the pun. But there's there's a lot between the two. Interestingly, according to the Witchcraft Museum in I'm going to fish them out today. According to the Witchcraft Museum in Boscastle down in Cornwall, oops, I'm back. If you want to do knitting magic, the best type of needles to use are glass ones.
I heard that, yes.
Yeah. Have to be quite careful with them.
Yeah, you have to be careful.
Yeah. They're also incredibly fiddly to use. They really are. They're really fiddly and they're quite flat. But yeah, that's quite good. So for me, knitting and crochet magic, that comes into the sort of into the mix as well at the same time as knot magic, because obviously you can tie knots in all different types of things, and of course that then leads you into binding. So you've got different types of knots that you might want to use if you're binding something or somebody, and you get like the whole crossover thing. Or it might be that you want to bind a situation so that you don't then want to repeat a certain set of circumstances again. So it's not just about, for me, I don't think binding is just about binding specific people. Although, yeah, that's a bit of a,
that's
bit of
the
a
one people
grey
think of,
area,
binding somebody to not come near you, or binding somebody not to act in a certain way, or harm somebody.
Yeah, exactly. But then you can also, I think, sort of bind a situation. If something happened, you can kind of, I reckon that you can actually bind it so that set of circumstances leading up to a specific, not necessarily including people, I don't think, but just such circumstances, doesn't then have that same, timeline again, so that you don't end up in that same situation again. So that I think is a possibility too. We have a fishy.
Oh, I can just about see it. Oh, here he is. There he is.
We could do knot magic in your whiskers, couldn't we?
He's got enough of them.
He's got plenty. Oh, Is he giving you a scathing look?
No, he's actually looking surprisingly happy.
Are you? You're going to wave at everybody?
Not so much now. His eyes have gone a bit wider. He's like, oh, hello.
Hello.
Let me go.
Hello. Yes.
Oh.
I don't know what he's doing now. He suddenly launched himself out of my bedroom this morning, and he just sort of landed on the side of the chair, sort of just went down to the floor. It's just like somebody had thrown him. He hadn't been
A cartoon when you see
It was, yeah. It was like plop. He came out of the bedroom sideways. It's like, what's he doing now?
Oh dear.
A weird cat. It really is. Right, what we got here? Yeah, glass needles. Yeah, they're cool, aren't they? But they are fiddly to do something with. You wouldn't want to knit yourself a jumper with that.
Where do you buy glass needles? Because it's not the sort of thing you generally see around the place.
No, where did I get them from?
Is that from a magical shop, or are they used for other things?
No, it was from a magical shop, I think. Can't remember which one. I'll think about that. It will suddenly occur to me. I can't remember. I've had them a long time. Where on earth did I get them from? I had to do a lot of hunting about for them. That's for sure.
Right. Yeah.
It will come to me. I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah. But it was a pain. Trying to find them was a real pain. And to be honest, I've only used them a handful of times.
Yeah.
Because I do magic with knitting and magic with crochet and stuff. But I find that they're such a pain because they're such a big size as well.
They're quite clunky.
Yeah, they are. And the whole idea, they're noisy. I mean, I'm noisy when I knit because of my wrists, but they are noisy. But again, that noise itself can be quite therapeutic. But yeah, you wouldn't want to knit yourself a jumper out of that because you'd be rather see-through. Rather loose knit.
Yes, chunky.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, but they're good things. But I'm not entirely sure, and have never been entirely sure, the reason that glass needles are better than metal ones. I'm sure.
Is it because it's the same thing about when you're dealing with the fae that metal is not necessarily a good thing to have?
Maybe, but I mean,
to do with that?
I don't know, possibly. But then I don't include the fae when I'm doing knitting magic anyway, in all honesty.
No.
Yeah, you couldn't knit a fairy coat with one of them. It'd be too big.
Yes.
You could knit a giant's coat, probably. I'm not afraid. So, and let's face it, we've got other tools that we have that aren't, whether it's anatomy or, you might have a sensor or whatever. They're metal, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I don't have a problem with using metals generally.
No.
But,
so, as I say, so I wasn't sure, and I'm still not sure the benefit of having glass needles for knitting magic over metal ones. I really genuinely don't know. If anybody knows, or if anyone feels like looking it up, please let me know.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
so now, hang on a mo. Yeah. So, what's your preference to silk, satin, cotton, wool, nylon, or anything that might be lying around the house for binding, please? Personally, I prefer. It's a real difficulty for me because obviously, being vegan, I tend to avoid silk. And of course, I avoid leather. So, sort of leather straps and that kind of stuff. Sort of leather binds.
Does that mean you wouldn't use wool either then, I'm guessing?
Yeah, so I try not to use wool as well. I mean, I've still got wool. I've got my wall of wool, haven't I? And again, I'm not going to throw it away because I think that's more disrespectful and so on. So I try and use natural stuff if I can as a preference. Things like hemp yarn, or of course you can use nettles. That makes a really good string. Actually, stinging nettles makes very good string. And of course you've got things like sisal as well. And if you're doing like the magic that I was doing and released this week, actually that was with sisal. That's good natural material and so on and so forth. So it's, and it's, I was burning it, but it, if you want to bury it, it will rot down nicely and that kind of stuff. But, it's easily sourced. And although cotton is obviously tends to be thought of as less, vegan unfriendly.
There are debates about that, though, ethically.
There's an awful lot of issues with cotton. So again, that's something else. It's a bit of a bind, really. It's
Sorry,
but Tish. But it's a difficult one, really. When you're vegan, it's kind of, you've got lots of dilemmas going on. So I tend to sort of like use what I've got lying about, really. If it's something that's, and I save everything. So if something comes with a little piece of ribbon, then I'll hang on to that. I won't throw it away. A little string and all that kind of stuff, and I reuse
string is very useful stuff.
But string's very, very useful stuff indeed. Yeah. So yeah, it does depend. Also depends what you want to tie up, I suppose, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, Tina's got a comment there. Tina H. Glass is non-conductive, so maybe that's good when you need to make something when you don't want any personal energies to go into it. Would that be? Because normally you're putting personal energies into things, I suppose, but if you don't want something to have.
That's an interesting concept, isn't it? I've never thought of that.
That's an interesting one, Tina,
Yeah. Yeah. I suppose if you're doing something for somebody else, if you're doing magic for somebody else, specifically for somebody else, and you don't want your own slant on it, then yeah, that would make perfect sense. Thank you. It's really, really...
You learned something this evening.
Yeah, definitely. That would make really good sense, yeah. Yeah, that would make sense. Thank you for that. I've been wondering about that for years. Yeah, years and years. I never thought of that. Thank you very much. Brilliant. I see you learn something new every day. Every day's a school day, they say, don't they? Yeah.
They do.
Excellent. Yeah, iron's a conductor, yeah. Metals, yeah. I have to be careful with them, though, because they're absolute buggers to get the...
Well, yeah. They tend to bite back, don't they?
Yes, they do bother, don't they? Yeah. So, yeah. Right, then, the big one, binding. Thoughts, please?
On binding. Well, again, I suppose it's just that, as you say, you're talking about situations, but the tendency tends to be to use it to bind somebody not to behave in a certain way or to keep their distance or not to be... It's usually to do with stopping somebody from doing something that is harmful.
Exactly.
But there's all kinds of ethics attached to it. It's like what you really want from magic is a win-win rather than a trying to have power over somebody's situation, because that's always a dodgy area. And
it is, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it can backfire.
Yeah, because obviously you've got that whole thing of it bending personal will, haven't you? So it's a really grey area, isn't it? It is. Even if it's, even if you're binding somebody from hurting themselves, because obviously there are some people that do. So even if you're binding somebody from hurting themselves, you're still changing their willpower and their own personal freedom of choice, etc. And it's a really, really difficult thing. And it is as you say, ethically, it's a pretty grey area, really, isn't it?
It is. And I mean, maybe there are other forms of magic that one, perhaps binding is something that it comes as a last resort, that you try other things first that are about much more permissive and gentle. But I think in a particular situation where if you've got to act fast and you've got to do something literally to protect somebody, then that may be a risky take. But I always think it's a difficult one.
It is a difficult one, isn't it? It's definitely a grey area.
Yeah, they don't always work.
Personally, it's not one of my go-to things, actually, binding. It really is. And I don't think I've ever done it more than a handful of times. I really don't think so, because I've always, as you say, found an alternative that's better as a win-win, rather than the knee-jerk reaction of, oh, well, I'll just bind that and that'll fix it. because you've got ramifications further down the line with that, haven't you?
Well, that's it. It's not an end in itself, is it? Something has to shift and change in that person, so their behaviour will change, and just saying you won't do this anymore doesn't really help them.
No.
On a psychological level, in future situations, again, where you've got a similar situation that can repeat, as these things often do.
Yeah.
Oftentimes you see it with things like sort of coercive or abusive relationship. And the problem is, yes, the person who is doing the behaviour, but it's also in the pattern of the person who falls into it sometimes more than once. There is an element of both people, the person needs help to not be in that situation. It's far more important.
Yeah, exactly. It is very difficult, isn't it? But it seems to be one of those things that newbies, if you like, seem to want to get to grips with early on, and I think that's worrying, actually. And it seems to be quite a common thing if you sort of go into any of the forums and stuff. I was thinking of doing the binding spell. They've sort of been sort of practicing witchcraft for 5 minutes, and then they're like, I think I'll do a binding spell because
it's like love spells, isn't it? They're the two things that people think of. That's what people. It's like, no, they're almost the last form of magic you should be doing.
Really, absolutely are, aren't they? Yeah, and
the more you learn and experience of life, the less inclined you are to go anywhere near those kind of spells, unless it's an absolute emergency.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then you have to counteract stuff after that anyway, because, like I say, you've got the ramifications further down the line.
Yes.
So it's a difficult one, really, isn't it? Definitely. Right. So Demorg, hello. What a name. Banana or pineapple yarn are good vegan alternative. I've not heard of that.
Pineapple yarn. Wow. Really? Yarn. I suppose because the outside of both of those things are quite fibrous.
Yeah. Are you, I wonder, in the UK, Demorg, or whether you're elsewhere? And I wonder if it's available in the UK, because I've never come across that. I shall have to do a search on Tinternet.
Oh, yes. Google it.
Guess what I'll be doing a bit later on. With my two fingers. Personally, to me, binding.
I think predictive text is doing its magic there.
Yeah. Whatever you're binding to you, which to me is no. Yeah, exactly. It depends. I suppose it rather depends on if you specifically want something bound to you, but then.
Yeah, I'd be very wary of that.
I'd be very, very wary of that.
If that's what you meant. And binding anything to yourself is
yeah, exactly. Because if you don't want it anymore, you're stuck with it.
Well, plus you've asked for it, so you kind of get what you asked for, and that's always a lesson in magic.
Exactly. That's that whole. Exactly. Be careful what you wish for; it might come true. Yeah.
Yes, you might not have exactly wanted that. Quite like that.
Exactly. And as Chris says, the strongest magic is the magic you don't use. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Definitely. But it's interesting though, and it's interesting that I don't know whether it was more popular in yesteryear, where people didn't think maybe quite so PC about things and just kind of went with their current mood and so on. But it seems to be something that was more popular back in the day.
I think so, yeah.
But I think people are just that much more aware of other people around them. Everything's very much more PC, isn't it? So, and there's a much higher awareness. Yeah, definitely. But it's interesting because if you read the old spell books and the old grimoires, donkey's years ago, there's almost always at least several pages, if not an entire section on binding.
Yeah, I think it was very, very much a go-to thing. Yeah, I do wonder what the repercussions might have been, though. Exactly. Attitudes have changed. People will try and be a bit more considerate perhaps of others, or take a longer term view rather than a knee-jerk reaction, which is
Yeah.
always a dangerous thing.
It is, definitely. But, yeah. But it's interesting how the attitudes of magic and what you should and could do, should and shouldn't do, and how it's changed over the years. Even in the, sort of like 40 or so years that I've been doing it, things have definitely changed. They really have.
Yeah, the idea, always the idea that, you only do magic for somebody if they've actually asked and things like that. People didn't question that quite so much.
No. They didn't.
Yeah.
It was done and that was that. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm quite glad that attitudes have changed. I think it's right that people should be asked.
Yeah, exactly.
And obviously these days it's easier because people are much more open to the idea, and we're a lot more mainstream than we were.
Exactly, yeah. So yeah, when you think about it, it's only been it'll be 70 years next year, won't it, that the Witchcraft Act was reprieved. So, it's really not that long. New. So it's still relatively new, really. So
and even in the last 30 years, I think attitudes have changed.
Yeah,
quite remarkably.
Yeah. Tina says, I was taught that binding needs a continuous stream of energy to fuel the spell, and it isn't something, therefore, you would do for someone else. That's an interesting.
There might be different ways of, different things that people think of as binding, I suppose.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because obviously different traditions are going to teach things in different ways, and that's understandable. But if you were doing something that did require that would be really blimey. It'd be too much like how it worked.
It really would, yeah. I'd find something that was a little bit easier on the energy, personally.
Yeah.
Oh no, I want to go and have some lunch.
So need a week off.
Yeah, exactly. I need a week off that. Yeah, just stay there. Just park the person around the back of the bike shed and go off for lunch and then come back again. I'll deal with you after lunch. Yeah.
Oh, blimey.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic though, and I think what I do find interesting is how attitudes have changed, because it is really quite different. Even in the last 10 years, I think it's different. I really do. And you sort of see other people coming along, that are new to it, and they've got different things to bring to the pot, haven't they? Which is nice. So you sort of, people that were, sort of 20, 30 years ago were seen as being, fairly eclectic, but, maybe not. You've been, a bit of this and a bit of that. And it just becomes more and more eclectic, I think, as time goes on. And that's brilliant. And I like that.
I like that too. Yeah.
I like to see it evolve and people do their own slant on things and their own take on everything. Because for me, I don't think there is a right and wrong way of doing things. I really genuinely don't.
No, I don't know.
Yes, there's going to be grey areas, dark areas, and so on. But, it's like opening a tin of beans. Yes, you could use a tin opener, or you could run it over with a car. Either way, you're going to open your tin.
Yeah, it's just whether you want to eat the beans inside or not.
Exactly, yeah.
But I mean, that is the thing. Because there are so many people now who are following this kind of a path. There are thousands more opinions. There are many more traditions that have sprung up. And they all kind of have the traditions tend to have their own ways and their own lineages, and there's a lot of store put by that, particularly in other parts of the world, not necessarily the UK so much, but there's a massive thing about where you've come from, and I suppose that's understandable too. But and some people need the structure of a very firm set and a system and a way to work, and that's fine. But people like us who may have had some of that training but actually have kind of potted off down our own little avenue.
Yes, exactly,
And no one's actually going to say, that doesn't, therefore you're not a witch because you're not part of this tradition or this coven or this whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Thankfully all that has changed a bit.
Yeah, which is good. Definitely, it's good. Yeah. It's interesting though. It is. Do you think that those people that crave the more traditional paths are those that come from, generally, not exclusively, but generally are those that come from a different religion to it.
There is a tendency to that, because you're kind of substituting one set of rules with another set of rules. I would say I've noticed a pattern. It's not exclusive by any means, but there's a definite tendency, because there's a certain familiarity about it, I think. Whereas, I mean, you and I probably, wouldn't know a rule if it hit us in the face, really. Kind of go the other way and don't really subscribe to any of that, in all seriousness, although we very much enjoy working in different ways with people when we've had the opportunity to. But yeah, it's not good to be hamstrung for us, but not everybody
is in its place, and it's enjoyable for what it is, and I'm certainly not going to detract from that. For me, it doesn't work as well as the other stuff that I do. But I'm not knocking it, basically.
I think it has a place, but it's a little bit like you in the kitchen. You and I go in the kitchen and we'll fling something together with whatever we've got available and a bit of selection of spices. We won't remember how we've cooked it, what went into it, apart from a lot of intent, and it will taste good at the end 99% of the time. There are other people who need a recipe, who need to need to follow a recipe and the structure. Exactly, so it's just different mindsets. It's not that one's right or wrong, but I think you have to know which you are, which you are.
Which is which? Yes.
Which is which? Which is which? And you've got to follow your own thing, because if you go to something very structured, it's a great place to learn and train quite often, and it's an interesting experience to work as a coven. But it doesn't suit everybody for a very long period of time, and that's
no, exactly. So people come and go, don't they? But it's just interesting. I think I like to think about things like that. Is it more for those people that have come from more organised religions, and it's maybe suits them better because that's been maybe their upbringing, for example, or is it just for those people that have always experienced chaos? Is the ordered format better for them because the rest of their lives is chaos? There's all sorts of things to be said for it, and there's lots of positives for it too. But I just like to do my own thing, to be honest. So what have we got here? Right. Oh, bone needles are good. Yeah.
Demorg is in the UK.
So cool.
I think perhaps it was the name. It sounded terribly exotic.
Indeed, yeah. No, actually, the reason that I asked was because I had genuinely never heard of banana or pineapple yarn, and I thought, well, maybe it's available in a different country. So, so cool. That's really cool. Bone needles too. Yeah, that would have the same reasoning behind it rather than the metal ones, wouldn't it? So yeah. Evolving and forever changing, says Hans. Absolutely, just perfect. And it does, and it has a place depending on what you're doing. Exactly. Because sometimes you might want, and again, even in your own life, sometimes you might want something that's particularly structured for a particular reason, and other times you just want to go with the flow and make it up as you go along. I
certainly think when people are training, sometimes when they're learning, that a period of being with a group of like-minded people, whether it's a formal coven or whether it's terribly structured, is quite useful in helping you to kind of sort the wheat from the chaff, and at least work out what your preference is and what your areas of comfort are. And
definitely. Have you got any obviously you ran a coven.
I did.
Have you got any for anyone that's interested, have you got any tips on finding a coven?
Well, it's a lot easier these days than it used to be. I'd certainly say that, because you've got things like I believe there are forums, and you've got things like the Pagan Federation of all the various regions. Certainly in the UK, I don't know how it works outside of it. There is the international PF as well. But there are, it's a difficult one, because if you're seeking, you're going to have to meet with somebody and be able to discuss things to work out whether they may be the right place for you to go to.
Yeah.
And there are people out there who are, I mean, in any walk of life, some people are more scrupulous than others.
Yeah.
I think you have to treat it as any other situation. Have your wits about you, and have the right questions to ask. To actually be able to find out how it works and suss out the person who is possibly the coven leader. If you're feeling that you resonate with them as you would with any other form of work that you'll be doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I would certainly get onto the in the UK, the Pagan Federation website, because that does have quite a lot of useful information. But you have to be slightly wary of a coven that are advertising on Facebook or something, because they don't generally advertise.
No.
But you'll have esoteric bookshops. We've got Atlantis Books, Treadwell's in London. There are open events at the Conway Hall. I mean, Lucia gives her rundown. That's London based, but there will be other people doing other things in other parts of the country. And really, that's a good way, is to go to the open events and start to meet people. And as you get to meet people, you are quite likely to find someone you resonate with, and they may know of a reputable, a sound coven that might think, who may be looking for extra members.
Exactly.
And don't rush. Don't be in a hurry.
Don't rush.
The first thing.
Because if you're in a hurry, then you might overlook warning signs that say not for you, not for you, not for you. So absolutely, definitely.
And apply your common sense to these people just as much as you would to anyone in any other walk of life. They might be witches. They're still people with their failings and annoyances as well as their good side.
Exactly. Exactly. Everyone's different. So So we have got, or they approach you. Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes they might approach you, but again, have your wits about you. Thanks, Chris. Yes, they have your wits about you. Don't just be.
That's quite unusual normally.
It is. But but don't be bamboozled by people. Basically, that's what I'm saying. Yes. So on that note, we've been nattering for an hour. Can you believe it? It's been passed really quick.
Wow.
England, aren't we? Yeah. So we'll be back next week, and we'll have another gossip about something, no doubt. And not sure what we'll chat about, but we'll think of something, won't we?
Oh, indeed. There's always something.
And probably not number 2s.
No.
Oh, I don't know though.
Oh, God.
Oh dear. Anyway, on that note, we'll say cheerio. Good night, everyone. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you. See you soon.